you are still meeting deadlines. You're still saying yes to whatever project or challenge that comes, across on the table for you. Still, you are the one people count on. But beneath all of that, something inside you is still whispering, I cannot keep going at this pace. I cannot. But you do, because slowing down feels more dangerous than staying tired. Well, today's conversation is for anyone who knows exactly what I'm describing right now. Welcome to Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I am Sana, and yes, this is the space, listeners, where we talk about what's really happening underneath the productivity, the polish. And I'm fine, thanks. And my guest today, listeners, Katherine Chestnut. A bit about her. She works at the intersection of mindfulness, breathwork, and nervous system regulation, helping high performing individuals understand the difference between actually being okay and just being functional. That distinction is absolutely important, listeners, and we'll uncover how it is. But today we are going to talk about something most of us don't have language for yet, the quiet survival mode that hides behind getting things done. And by the end of this episode, I'm very, very sure you'll have a clearer sense of what's running underneath your stress and something practical that you can try the same day. So, Catherine, welcome to the show. As always, it's an honor having you here.
Thank you for having me back.
Amazing, amazing. Catherine, this is such a relatable, and I'm very sure many of our listeners they can relate to, especially that especially in the workplaces, or maybe after a long day, we get asked, how was your day? Yeah, it was good. It was good. But deep down, you feel that tiredness, you feel that sometimes frustration as well. You feel like, how long this will keep going on. But then that fear, it comes up from within you and it says, no, you have to keep going on because when you stop, or if you pause or stop, it's going to get out of control. So I'm really thankful for bringing up this topic, Catherine, for us.
Yeah, a lot of high performing, very ambitious professionals, and I was one of those people. It's,
Mm.
people say, oh, you work too much. So saying basically that you have a productivity addiction. I'm known
Mm.
for saying when people asking me what did I do for a living, I would say I get things done. But honestly, That that productivity is sometimes an avoidance strategy that
Mm.
looks really impressive from the outside, but honestly, it's a way to manage our emotions.
Yeah.
In other words, if I stay busy enough, I don't have to feel the uncertainty or the grief or the loneliness or the anger or the disappointment or my exhaustion. Honestly,
Absolutely.
I w there were many times when I went to work because it was my haven. It was a safe place to go,
Mm.
and I didn't have to, you know, feel some of the uncertainty or disappointment that I was feeling at home.
I absolutely understand with Catherine, and because there was a stage, there was a phase in my life, where this is exactly what was I doing, and I didn't realize that's the kind of, I should say, the dangerous part about it. I'm going to use that word because a few years later, I really understood what were the implications in there. But in that phase, I didn't realize that I was just masking my emotional emotional distress, or you can say that the fear of the fact that if I pause, or if I just, kind of just leave everything and let myself free for a few moments, I'm going to break down. So I cannot do that. I cannot afford to do that. So you just kind of shut yourself down and get yourself into that automated mode of doing, doing, doing.
Yeah, busyness has an illusion of control, right? If we're busy
Yeah.
and we're checking things off our list, I mean, honestly, who doesn't like scratching things off on our list because it
Yeah.
feels like you've accomplished something and it gives you that quick hit of relief, like, ah, and your nervous system can quiet down just a moment because you're feeling like, I got something done. I can relax a little, but then you're right back at it.
Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely, Catherine. And that brings me to this idea floating around that calm and ambition are opposites. That if you slow down, you will lose your edge. Um, but as you mentioned that business, there's an illusion in that. What do you think, Catherine? Is the biggest misconception we have about being calm and being driven?
So there is this is a misconception, and I had the same fear. So you and I are in the same room.
Yeah.
That feeling that if I relax, I will lose my edge and I'm not going to be as successful as I have been.
Hmm.
And what really happens is that when we build calm and that steadiness, we're not first off, we're not leaking our energy, right? We're anxious and that requires energy. And we have internal chaos or constant stress going on. When we're not doing that, it allows us to be a little sharper, a little more decisive. It gives us the ability to be more creative. It doesn't dull our ambition to be calm. It just refines it. We get to be more discerning. We don't have to prove that we're worth it. We know that we are, and we get to choose accordingly. And that is a whole different level of our own power.
Hmm. Hmm. And I also believe, Catherine, that this is very much different because now this particular part of the conversation, it can have many uh, dimensions added onto it. Now some would say, okay, so that means maybe if I'm a high performing individual and I'd always like to be busy in something or somewhere, you are asking me to uh, pause, or maybe sometimes quote unquote procrastinate, just relax and worry a less. That doesn't make sense in today's day and age. It can be like it can deflect to something else, and it can feel like um it can feel like sometimes very demotivating also, because let's say I've actually faced this kind of situation where if to my friend who is probably a very high performing person, high performing individual, they love to be busy all the time. They wouldn't love to sit idle for some time, and it's not about being idle, it's just about maybe doing something else, something creative, or just maybe reading a book, or something creative. um it wouldn't make sense to that person, and they would say, no, I don't like that. You may prefer that because you do not function like that. That's why you prefer, but I don't prefer like that. I always love to be on the run.
It's exhausting though.
Yeah, it is.
I
It
mean, a lot of us don't know how to exist without moving
mm,
because stillness feels uncomfortable because what happens is our emotions that we've been
mm,
ignoring, and I'm not saying all of them, but some of them, if we're using motion and momentum to avoid those emotions, they want to be heard and they rise to the surface. So slowing down can initially increase anxiety instead of
mm.
decreasing it because the nervous system suddenly has space to notice what it's been ignoring.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate for giving the perfect segue, Catherine, because that's exactly what I would love to ask you. So, what's exactly happening in the nervous system when someone is over functioning?
When we are constantly moving,
Mm,
our and our brains are meant to be in a constant searching mode. Our brains
okay.
are constantly searching for any particular threat. So, looking for, you know, hundreds of hundreds of millions of years ago or tens of millions of years ago, it was saber-toothed tigers. Our brains
Right.
were searching for that. Uh, and the same is true now, except maybe it's your boss walking down the hall or
Yeah.
right? It's just a different kind of threat. And so we're keyed up all the time. And so we live in this constant state of, I have to survive. And if I move, they can't catch me.
Right.
And our nervous system gets addicted to that urgency, right? Because it feels very urgent. So to
Mm,
be calm first feels very odd and unfamiliar, even boring, even. You know, if you're saying, "Oh, I don't like to read because that's boring. I don't like
mhm.
to sit and listen to music because I'm bored." It's because you're used to having that surge of adrenaline all the time.
Exactly. Exactly. And there are so many aspects here, Catherine, that you highlighted. First of all, that because it instantly brought the cultural aspect here as well. For example, in my culture, this always has been this fear of um, discipline. It's required, but then it was not just discipline. It was like this very rigid discipline or this strictness that oh my goodness, maybe probably my father will catch me maybe playing or doing something else other than studying. So let's just sit and let's just make sure that I study. And he doesn't see me sitting idle or watching TV or something like that. Especially the millennials would be able to connect with that when we actually had only TV. But now you also mentioned about the adrenaline rush, and that really um, brings that this aspect right now, the attention span. That in fact, I listen to many of the people who are in the creative field, maybe movies or in fact podcast productions, talking about that. How still statistically long form content or they yeah, they have a very kind of, niche set of listeners who would devote their 10, 15 minutes or maybe 1 hour, 2 hours listening to something, listening to a long form content. I have seen people, and it's not even in the older generations, but younger generations, they still prefer reading books, the physical, the hard copies, not the audiobook or the Kindle. But in terms of the overall, the Uber level statistics, short form or those 10 minutes hooks or 2 minute hooks that will keep you engaged long enough for that media to be consumed. I think we are seeing a huge, huge change in the way that attention span, the neurological aspect is changing now.
I hear you about, you know, books. And I actually don't read physical books anymore because
Mm,
when I used to travel all the time, I didn't wanna
mm,
have to carry yet another thing. So
mm.
I read on my iPad using the Kindle app. But
Okay.
yes, I a lot of people don't ever want to do that, the whole and I'd be interested to know more about that study that you looked at because, I mean, think about when we do doom scrolling, right? We're getting that quick hit of something to divert our attention, and
Mm.
if it's too long, we're on to the next one, or if it doesn't hook me in the first 5 to 10 seconds, I'm moving to the next one.
Right.
And it's I was just thinking about that this morning about how some of my, YouTube videos get more
Mhm.
looks than others. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, you should do more like this." And I'm like, I'm just gonna do what I do. There's a part of me that's just gonna be rebelling against. I don't care about the algorithms. I wanna deliver the information the way that I want to, which it may sound short-sighted, but, um, it's just what it is.
It's just what it is, exactly. Exactly. And about the books, Catherine, honestly, I mean, it's kind of a lived experience, what I actually saw. Maybe I didn't check the researches or studies because I was recently I went to a book fair, and it was all about, I think it was a Harry Potter book fair, I believe. Of course, once again, as the cultural component, but still I saw so many, young people, they are buying books, I thought, okay, maybe, yeah, still there are people who would love to have the physical book. In fact, I also purchase the books, but I haven't read all of them, so yeah, I'm also that guilty.
Yeah, I know people who read physical books as well, so but back to the whole chaos and momentum and high pressure. I mean, some of us create pressure at the last
Mm.
minute because we know. How many times have you procrastinated to complete something, a report or a paper or something like that, and then you end up staying up half the night to finish it,
Yeah.
which is not going to produce your best work, and yet there's that addiction to the stress, to the adrenaline, to the urgency. So, but the answer is not to be less ambitious. And
Mm.
I would say being ambitious and having your dad catch you not watching TV instead of doing your homework, I would say that's pretty the same here.
Yeah.
But what we need to do is learn how to succeed without using stress as our fuel.
Mm.
Stress isn't we don't need the stress to be successful. And
Mm.
being more balanced doesn't make you less effective. In fact, frequently it makes you more effective because you waste less energy on overthinking and suppressing your emotions and dealing with chaos that may come up.
I think this is a very, very important, you know, uh, statement that you make, Catherine. Absolutely. Because that's how we look at, we have been looking at these words calm or relax or pause, because we believe that if we are not stressed, that means, we are not successful.
Right. Right. And it's not true. And if you think about many of us, we're operating from unprocessed survival patterns that
Mm.
happen because they produce results and we just keep going. We keep getting rewarded for it. And again, the goal isn't to stop achieving. I feel like what I do now is just as important as what I did 10 years ago and 20 years ago, but I've stopped needing to be exhausted and I've stopped needing the pressure to be successful and using those as measures of my success.
Mm, absolutely. And Catherine, I know we are short on time, but is there any, for someone listening right now who recognizes all of this in themselves? Is there any? I know it's different for different people, but still, any one practical thing that they can try today, something that doesn't require maybe an hour of free time or a perfect routine or a perfect checklist.
Well, we're not going to be perfect and we're not going to have a perfect checklist, but the most powerful thing that anyone can do to stop living in constant tension and urgency is just to pause. Just pause before you respond to anything. Pause
Mm,
before you send that email. Have you ever done that? Have you ever, you get an email, it irritates you, annoys you, frustrates you, and you pound out a response. And then before you send it, you go, I'm going to wait on this one for a minute. I'm going to go do something else
yeah.
because I'm I'm coming from a place of agitation and anger,
Right.
frustration. So it's the same thing, except do it whenever you can. Just pause, take a deep breath, check in with your body. How does my body feel? And that one simple little pause interrupts urgency. The right? The tenseness, the bracing that we're holding. It interrupts that for just a moment and reminds your body that you're not under attack because it starts in our body.
Exactly.
And it sounds really simple, but it's really magical and powerful.
It is. It is for sure, Catherine. It is. And this is a work in progress for me. And I'll also share with all the listeners that it's not going to happen overnight. It will take its time, but be there. Just give some compassion and kindness to yourself. And yeah, it may take different time, for different people, but it's surely going to feel magical, as you said, Catherine.
Mhm.
And Catherine, for further exploration, and also if our listeners they would love to connect with you, follow your work, how they can reach out to you.
Well, you can find me on my website, which is katherinechestnut.com, or follow me on YouTube. All of my meditations and courses are there, as well as on Insight Timer, which is the largest free meditation app that there is.
Brilliant. So, listeners, you heard it from Catherine. So, what I'll do is, as I do it always, I'll put everything in the show notes so it's easy for all of you to find Catherine and check out her YouTube or Insight Timer. And yes, that's it for today's episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, listeners. If something Catherine said landed for you, sit with it for a moment before you move on to the next thing. That pause, that's already the work beginning. And Catherine, thank you so much for this really crucial and such a wonderful conversation. I really loved it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, listeners, take care of yourself and not the way you think you should, but the way You actually need to. And this is your host, Sora. I'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you so much.